Good to see everybody. Good to have Brother Nate back with us and feeling better. I've handed out lesson 4 for next week. Is there anybody that didn't get a copy of 4? All right, so we're picking up in lesson 2. How should we read the Song of Songs? Lesson 3, we're actually going to start diving into the text, but we're going to finish up lesson 2 just to try to get a better understanding of the way the book is written, of course being poetry, and gain a little better understanding of that. We had finished up with question 3, and I just want to highlight this again before we move on to question 4. Of course, the book is called the Song of Songs, and so I'll go back and forth between Song of Solomon or Song of Songs, and it works out well because both of them are SOS. So the Song of Songs, they didn't use adjectives the same way that we use adjectives back in those days in the Hebrew literature, and so they didn't say, this song's pretty great, this song's pretty awesome. No, it is the Song of Songs. It is the greatest song. And we talked just briefly as we were ending class last week, and this is just strictly my opinion of why I believe that it is called the Song of Songs, because we have recorded that Solomon wrote 1,005 songs. That's a lot of songs. And yet this one is called the Song of Songs. And I believe that one of the primary reasons for that is because of the initial marriage relationship from Genesis chapter 2, the family relationship, the marriage relationship, outside of your relationship with God, your relationship with Christ. There is no more important relationship on this earth. And I believe that God knew in His wisdom that He wanted us to understand what that marriage relationship was supposed to look like, what it was supposed to be like. And unfortunately, also opinion, I don't have any statistics to back this up, but I have a feeling that a large portion of Christian marriages are not Song of Solomon marriages. And so this is something that is very, very important, and that is why I believe it is the Song of Songs, because it is something that was needed then, and it is something that is most definitely needed today. So we've kind of talked over this multiple times since the beginning of the class, but who wrote the Song of Songs, and what evidence from the text supports your conclusion? All right, Ken said Solomon. Why do you say that?
Because it says it in the very first verse.
All right, so Song of Solomon, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. All right, somebody else have a thought? Jesse?
There's repeated references to him in addition to the 1:1. You got chapter 3, verses 7 through 11, chapter 8, verses 11 and 12 that mention his name.
Okay. Honey?
I actually think the Shunammite woman wrote it.
Okay.
The Hebrew translation doesn't necessarily say that it is by Solomon. It could be referring to, about, just like the Psalm of David.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things when we read the very first verse, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. The Hebrew expression can literally mean belonging to Solomon, about Solomon, or by Solomon. And so that's why you do have some discussion around who the author of the book is. And this is another one, kind of like we talked about last week with allegorical versus literal, the 2-person versus the 3-person. I'm not going to get in a debate with somebody because I think that there's some room to have a discussion. You will hear me throughout the class refer to it being Solomon's, and my reasoning would kind of coincide with what Jesse said. He's mentioned repeatedly multiple times, and I think it goes back to the fact that he had wrote 1,005 songs, and this is, in my opinion, another one with that. And I've mentioned that a couple of times. That's in 1 Kings chapter 4 and verse 32, where it says that Solomon also spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. Go ahead, Norm.
I was thinking back to, for instance, in the Proverbs, for instance, you've got different people that were in there that wrote different proverbs and everything, but a lot of the author is God. So you can see similarities.
Good point.
Through all that.
Yeah.
Even though it says this is a proverb from so-and-so, this is Solomon or David writing the Psalms or whatever.
Yeah, I did have a point with that. I mean, we consider it wisdom literature. Obviously, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes are attributed to Solomon, and we attribute all of that as wisdom literature. So just in my mind, that kind of goes together. Any other comments on 4? All right, so question number 5. What clues within the song help identify changes in speaker or setting? Todd?
They use a masculine or a feminine form of the words, which isn't going to be clear in the English.
Yeah. So there are masculine and feminine pronouns that are used that in English would be hard to determine. But if you look at those words in Hebrew, it's a little easier to recognize in some situations. I will admit, as I'm still reading through, I'm not for sure, the writer or not the writer, but who is speaking here. But that's some helpful clues, is the pronouns that are being used. What else? Honey?
Certain phrases will have to scene changes, location changes, questions.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there are a lot of words that are used and locations that I think that are used that are that would help us determine, okay, well, this is the woman speaking due to the location or the description that's being given, or this is the man speaking. And oftentimes the words that they are using. Obviously, we talked some in one of our previous lessons about kind of words that are reoccurring, and so we're going to hear "my beloved" a lot. Who says that? Yeah, both of them actually say it, so that one's not as easy to determine. They both say "my beloved," but it talks about "my darling," "my love." When it says "my sister," who's talking? Okay, sounds kind of easy. All right, "my dove," "my perfect one," "the fairest," "the most beautiful," "friend" is used. Bonnie brought that up in our first class, and so there are words that oftentimes one will use describing the other, and that makes it easier. Okay, well, this passage we know is this speaker and not the other. But you'll see the change in the location. We'll talk about this some even tonight in our lesson. But is it in the vineyard? Is it in the garden? Is it the countryside? Is it in Jerusalem? Is it the wedding procession? And so we see these changes in location, and then these phrases that are used. They will help. All right, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I've already got it all figured out and I can tell you with 100% certainty who's speaking in each situation. But I will point out again, most of your modern translations that you have, whether it's a hard copy of the Bible or even your app, they have headings. And so like with mine, chapter 1, it says the young Shulamite. And then verse 8, it says Solomon, the lover, speaks. Chapter 2, the brides, and so it has these headings where they have made their determination, but again, that's not inspired. That's people that, I'm not going to say they're like us, because I'm sure they're smarter than I am, but that's a man's interpretation of who they believe is speaking, and that's been added by the translators and not part of the original inspired text. Anything else? Go ahead, Norm.
Yeah, I just got a new ESV version for another study, but they have a unique way of doing it with the he, she, and others are the three ways that they put it forward. So again, another interesting take.
And we talked about that because you've got, for sure, a man and a woman, but then you've got the brothers, you've got the daughters of Jerusalem that also come into play as you go through it as well. So just quickly, what are some new observations that you may have made the second time through reading it that maybe you didn't notice in the first time? Norm?
For me, the who was speaking thing, the first time through, it just was a jumble in my mind. And I was reading my old trusty New American Standard, which I never read the Song of Solomon in before, so it's completely no marks on it or anything, and I struggled. And then I got my new ESV out, and it at least gave me an opinion.
Yeah. And that's worked for me as well, the more times I read it, but then also sometimes I'm reading a passage and I flip-flop from what I had originally thought. That's where I'm at. Go ahead, Jesse.
Well, you got the nature imagery is just everywhere. The communication is constant with encouragement, praise, and reassurance, and admiration, and invitations, and expressions of commitment. The woman certainly has a prominent voice, and you can see that love is more than just physical attraction. So to
Yeah.
some extent.
Yeah, one of the things that continues to strike me every time I read is the imagery of nature that is used, just in the setting, but also in the way that they describe one another. And that's always something that I have noticed. Sister Shirley?
Well, wasn't Israel regarded as the bride price in the Old Testament?
That's definitely part of the,
And in the New Testament, the church is classified as the bride.
yep, that's definitely part of the allegorical side of looking through Song of Solomon. Yes, absolutely. And you may notice more of those things the more times you read it, that things may jump out. Daddy?
I mentioned, I guess earlier when I first looking at it, but this is a song, and I was thinking of random scenes. But as you read it more, you can kind of see the flow from the progression of the song.
Yeah.
And that's through studying commentaries on it too.
Yeah, now that I let you do that. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I guess going along with what you said about all the descriptions of nature, that I know that from my point of view, I don't quite understand all the metaphors that are being made and everything, but it's evident that the author had a deep appreciation for God's work to credit all these attributes, to be beautiful things. Like clearly they hold God's craftsmanship and purpose.
Yeah, and I think that is an excellent point. And I think that we all have things that we like to do, like in our spare time. And like, I love nothing more than being on a trail in nature somewhere and just admiring the beauty of nature and God's creation. And I think that oftentimes we are in awe, or we should be, whenever we come across certain natural things, maybe things that we have not seen before. And I think that it's interesting that that imagery is used, comparing that to the love between both the man and the woman as well. Anything else on this one? So let's get into this idea of reading Hebrew poetry. And I think that one of the biggest mistakes that we can make when reading through the Song of Solomon is trying to turn every image into some code, okay? We're drilling down into literally every word. And it's like, well, what does that mean? And I think that we can lose the meaning of all of it if we handle it that way, because Hebrew poetry was not written to be a history book where we're analyzing literally everything that is said. And so I think overall it's trying to communicate a truth to us, a principle to us. It's trying to communicate wisdom to us. And I think that it is doing that through some of the things that we just talked about, through the imagery that we see, through the word imagery, through comparison, through repetition. We see certain phrases and certain things mentioned over and over again. And I think also by emotion. This is a very emotional book. And I think that poetry is designed to draw some emotion. And so we have to remember this as we go through and we read it, that we're not, trying to understand, well, what does every individual image symbolize, but really, what's the overall picture? What's the principle of what we are trying to get from this? If you think of poetry like a painting, all right, we're not nitpicking every stroke. We're trying to see what's the picture that the artist is trying to get us to see. And so as we study the Song of Solomon, we need to resist the temptation to analyze literally everything, because I think when we do that, we're going to miss the big picture of God's masterpiece that He has put before us. And so to kind of help us with this, I want to think about I remember when I was a kid, it's like the first psalm I had to memorize. And I think that for most of us, we probably had this, at least the very beginning of it, in our memory. So Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. What does that mean? Is Jesus literally a shepherd with a staff and we're a bunch of sheep running around and he's trying to keep us, fenced in? What is that saying? April?
He cares for us. He leads us. It's figurative of the provision that he makes for us.
Yes. And so when we think about a shepherd and we think about the good shepherd, it's about guidance, it's about protection, it's about provision, like April said. It's about love and care. That's what and we understand that. Like I think that I shouldn't say nobody. Most of us aren't going to look at this and read, the Lord is my shepherd, and we think, man, he's got his staff and we're a bunch of sheep running around. We understand that. I shall not want. Verse 2, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. I don't know about you. I can't remember the last time I laid down in a green pasture. Well, what's the idea? Right.
Protection provided.
Lots of food.
Yes, absolutely. Again, the imagery is there, and we understand that. And so I just want to point that out. Like, we already know how to do this, and so let's not then turn around with the Song of Solomon and be like, well, I'm not believing he called her a horse. Okay? We've got to understand just Hebrew poetry and what is happening. And again, I think that we all understand this just from this. This is a poem. So, out of all the people in this world has created, with all the roads I could have taken and all the lives I could have lived, some impossible miracle of timing allowed my story to cross paths with yours. And if I spend the rest of my life searching for a word greater than lucky, I still don't think it would be enough to explain what you are to me. You know what that is in English? I'm lucky to have you. Okay? We all understand, again, just general poetry. And so I'm just trying to emphasize this as we go through the Song of Songs, that it is Hebrew poetry, and that's the way that we need to understand it. So I kind of wanted to use that to kind of help set our scene for the last questions here in Lesson 2. So how should reading Hebrew poetry differ from reading historical books such as Genesis, Acts, or Kings? Honey?
The historical aspect tells what happened, moves you through the events in sequence, versus poetry explores how something means or feels and moves you through images, emotions, and ideas.
Yes. Very good explanation. Other comments? Ken? Honey, tell him again. Ken said he couldn't hear you. I can't repeat all the good things that she said.
I said historical books tells you what happened and moves you through the events in sequence, versus poetry, which explores what something means or feels like. It moves you through the images, emotions, and ideas.
Thank you.
So when I think of reading through the book of Acts, what's the book of Acts telling us? The history of the early church. And so that's very important for us to know, knowledge that we need. And obviously there are applications that we can still make to ourselves today whenever we read through that. When we read through the book of Kings, what's that telling us? Yeah, it's telling us the history of the kings. And so we have all of these events, like Honey said. And so we've got these events that have happened. And we say stories, but they're literally things that took place, that happened, that are important to our history and our understanding of God and who He is. But that's not the same as poetry that's written to communicate truth through images, like we've just talked about with Psalm 23 and then that poem that I mentioned there. And so there's going to be figurative language. Whenever you're reading a historical account of an event, there's typically not going to be figurative language. And so those are things that set them apart. There are going to be metaphors that are used that you're typically not going to see whenever you're reading through history. And while reading through history, I think that it should evoke certain emotion. Obviously, when we read about King David and the struggles and the things that he went through, and then we read some of his Psalms, like, to me, that's kind of emotional. but it's not in the same sense as when we're reading through the Song of Solomon and the emotions that we get from the imagery and the overall picture that we see. Anything else on number 7, Daddy?
One other thing too is, one tries to read it from their point of modern day view. And, you need to try to put yourself in place of the writer and understand it better.
Yeah, and that's very important. Again, when we're reading through the Song of Solomon, when he calls her a horse, it's not a bad thing. All right. Obviously, most of the things that we see, we wouldn't say the same things about our spouses today. Obviously, because we're not living in that time. But in that time, it's very loving. All right. It would not be very loving if we said some of the things today that they were saying to each other back then. Anything else on number 7? All right, number 8. When reading poetry, how can we recognize the difference between literal statements and figurative language? Norm?
Well, things such as direct comparisons, similes, this is like this kind of thing. So there are different word formulas.
Yes.
You can look at and find out.
Yeah, that should be an easy one that jumps out to us when we're reading things and it says, you are like. It's not, you are a horse. You're like. That's figurative language, and that's something that helps us to understand. Obviously, it's not something that is literal, but there are also literal statements. One of them is in our lesson 3 in chapter 1 of verse 5, where it says, I am black but lovely. That's a literal statement. And she's talking about the complexion of her skin. But in chapter 4, verse 4, it says, your neck is like the Tower of David. Okay, that's not literal. Okay, so some of it is common sense whenever we read through, again, just the poetic standpoint of things. And so the overall goal as we continue to study this is just to understand the point of the comparison rather than, again, forcing every image into some exact symbolism that may not be there. Did I see another hand? Clarissa?
When I initially read it, I think I probably mentioned it to you because we were together in the car. In chapter 4, verse 2, your teeth are like a flock of shorn ewes that have come up from the washing, all of which bear twins, and not one of them has lost its young. So I was like, they have good, clean, white teeth and all of them there. That was a fun, yeah.
Yeah, since John knocked mine out, mine are not. You could say that about me. Anything else on number 8? Todd?
It's kind of hard though sometimes. Like I was looking at chapter 1, verse 6, and it clearly goes from literal to figurative when she says, they made me caretaker of the vineyards. That's literal. But I have not taken care of my own vineyard. And she's referring to her body. And so then, like later on, they're going to talk about her garden, and that's figurative. But then later, she might be going into a literal garden in the image, or her lover's garden.
Yep.
And so some of that is just hard, even chapter to chapter, because the imagery might be used in 2 different ways.
Yes, absolutely. And again, I fully confess, I don't have all this figured out. And there are some things that it is common sense. There are some things it's not. And it does make it harder because of the use of the same type of language used both literally and figuratively as well, as Todd pointed out there. Go ahead, Norm.
What's interesting about what Todd just said too is that we still use those kinds of comparisons though in those ways. For instance, somebody who's making a talk and he's trying to get across something to somebody. He says, "Yeah, I was walking in the garden, but when you get your garden, you know, you're the garden of your mind, you know, and you're planting seeds in it." And now they're able to, in the talk itself, directly make the connections of there. And again, these are things that God, through his use of language, makes it so that we can readily take one picture and put it in our mind and compare it to another.
Yes. All right, just real quick, why do poets use imagery, comparison, and repetition instead of simply stating facts? And I think that part of it is an experience where we're trying to experience the truth rather than just being told, again, facts that may have happened. And so I think that as we've already discussed and we've already talked about. We need to appreciate the beauty of the poetry while allowing that poetry to point us toward God's wisdom. That's the overall thing that we need to remember. And so as we're going through the remainder of this study, what is God trying to tell us? His wisdom on love, His wisdom on marriage, His wisdom on that covenant relationship. And that's the overall thing that we need to remember. Real quick, Norm.
Yeah, we think in pictures.
Some of us.
Language,
Some of us like to read books, and some of us just like to look at pictures. So.
No, I mean literally, we think in pictures. Words represent pictures in our minds, literally. And so this poetry can be hugely effective in getting through to things that you never will reach in any other way.
If it's not too confusing.
Yep.
All right, if you've not already turned there, turn over to Song of Solomon. We're going to start talking about lesson 3 now, attraction, character, and courtship. And so we've obviously talked about some introductory stuff, and then talking about, again, just this poetry in general and how we need to understand it. And now we get to see God's wisdom for love in this relationship actually being lived out. But one of the things that I want us to notice, just right off the bat, in chapter 1, verse 2, it says, "May he kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine." And then I want you to turn over to the very end, chapter 8 and verse 14. It says, "Hurry, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag on the mountain of spices." Is there anything that you notice about that, or something that may strike you just about how the book ends and how it begins? Honey? Did everybody hear that? Starts with desire and it ends with desire. There is this longing that you see very, very clearly spelled out in the very, very beginning, and that longing is spelled out in the very, very end. What does that tell us? So sometimes we talk about young love. What's young love? What did you say? Puppy love, okay. Honey?
Young love refers more to the physical, sexual aspect of our relationship.
Okay. So the more of the physical side of it, Lena?
Well, I feel like it's always when you see only good in the person. You don't see any drawbacks. The person is perfect, and you're attracted to that person.
Yep. Yeah. I've heard someone say that dating shows the best, marriage shows the rest. I saw another hand. Ken?
I would say it's mostly infatuation,
Okay.
usually anyway.
All right. So when I think of young love, I think of excitement, something that's new and fresh. And you have this desire, which is not a bad thing in that sense. What's old love? Yes, that's a trick question. Well, I think that too often what happens is we start out with this young love, and then we don't have marriages that mimic Song of Solomon. And so it's not exciting anymore. There's nothing fun about it. And it's just work. And so I think that one of the messages that we see here really is about biblical love. And it's not just we're trying to survive our marriage. We're supposed to flourish in it. And I think that's God's design. And I think that it was just something that kind of caught me with the beginning and the end. Go ahead, Andy.
Reading through the whole thing and trying to put structure to it, I thought of it more like anticipation in the beginning, and then like the consummation part in the middle, and then affirmation at the end.
Look at there, Andy got a 3-point sermon already ready to go.
Maybe you thought about the little thing.
And Anticipation, consummation, and affirmation. All right. Norm?
I think of it like the difference between love and love, as in on the Greek side, where you have the phileo, which is more of that young love, and it's the attraction and all that, and then the depth of love in the agape, which is where we're supposed to attain to that. And so it's this idea of attainment in a relationship that is the most endearing part of it and the strongest part of it.
All right, let's jump into the opening reflection question that I had for you. So when people first begin a relationship, what qualities should matter most? Looks, all right. Andy just got right off the bat, all right. Now, I'm not saying that should matter most, but obviously one of the things that we're talking about is attraction, and that you're not looking for somebody that you don't find attractive, not in this society or country. Go ahead, Sunshine. Loyalty. All right, so I think that loyalty is a huge one that you should be looking for as a characteristic. What else? Jesse?
A shared commitment to God. Does this person love God and desire to follow His will?
Yeah, and so their faith, mutual faith that you both have is something that, a quality you should definitely be looking for. What else? Ray?
Both selfishness and selflessness.
Okay. Both selfishness and selflessness. So in what way?
I think you should, for a relationship, be selfish enough to be like, no, I need this for me and my partner, and I'm going to stand this ground. At the same time, selfless enough to give. Relationships are about give and take, and you have to have both of those things to give and take.
Yes. And I'm not for sure if this is going to explain some of what Ray is saying, but in pre-marriage counseling, when I talk to couples, one of the things I talk about is expectations. And a huge part of that is communication. And yes, we are to be selfless. We're to put the other person's needs before our own. But whenever you're coming into a relationship, if you don't even know what the other person needs or what their expectations are, then how are you going to be able to meet those? And so there has to be a certain amount of communication from the standpoint of, okay, this is what I need. Because we talk about the differences between a man and a woman. Obviously, I've lived in a man's body. I've never lived in a woman's body. Regardless of what people tell you nowadays, you can't do it. And so we've got to have this communication to understand one another. So I think just communication in general is a big one. What else? April?
Observing the respect that they show towards you and towards other people, their family members, just strangers. I feel like it tells a lot about a person.
Yeah, and I had heard some story where I don't remember if it was from a CEO, but somebody, it's like they're wanting to know how, their employees treat the janitor, or how they're going to treat the what we might consider the lowest person. How do you treat them? What kind of respect do you have for them? Because that's going to tell me what kind of person you really are deep down. And so one of the reasons why I wanted us to kind of think about this, obviously there are a lot of qualities that we need to be considering. And so for those of you that are not married yet, you need to be looking at these things. But I do believe that the Song of Solomon also shows attraction within a relationship. And most of the times you're not going to look at somebody that you think is not attractive and pursue that person. I'm not going to say it never happens, but attraction oftentimes will begin a relationship because you think someone is pretty. You think that they're beautiful, or you think that they are handsome. But their character should be the determining factor, and does that relationship continue to grow? All right, we can't look at someone and say, well, that's the prettiest thing I've ever seen, and then all of a sudden we start overlooking all of these character flaws, all right, because they're pretty. So attraction matters, character matters even more, and we'll talk about this some more as we go. Go ahead, Todd, sorry.
You had Proverbs 31:30 in your supplemental.
Yep.
Charm is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. And so a lot of times, yeah, when we're in our immature years, we're just looking for somebody who looks good, kind of like Samson. But if you wait and grow and become a little more spiritually mature, you may find yourself drawn to a person who maybe didn't previously look good to you, because you start to value what really matters, which is the hidden person of the heart.
Absolutely. Yep, beauty is vain. That was one of the reasons I wanted to stick that one in there. And we'll talk about that some more as we go throughout the class too. Francis?
Well, if you imagine yourself as being physically blind, what do you base that relationship on? You don't base it on your appearance. You base it on what you feel, what they relay to you, what you want to know about them. So you have to have that communication to get to know who that person is.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so we've talked about the poetry and the imagery that is used. And so I just wanted you to kind of look at the images that we see within this first couple of chapters, and the feeling or quality that may be communicated by that particular image. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but I think this is a good practice, that whenever you're reading through and you're looking at these images, I mean, just a couple of them. So what do you think of when you think of a vineyard? Clarissa?
Like Ron was saying, it's used literally, but it was also used for her appearance, and she was using it in the sense of it's not good, disheveled, and
But just like even with the image here, what do you think of with a vineyard? Bonnie?
Life, maybe sustenance, beauty.
Yeah. I mean, I look at that and it's like, somebody put a whole lot of work into that. Looks pretty to me. It's producing fruit. There's growth that we see there. It's something that is valuable. We're going to talk about the little foxes as we go throughout the class. And so they were trying to protect animals and things from disrupting the vineyard. And so when we think about Jesus, over in John chapter 15, he illustrates vineyards as places of growth, places of fruitfulness. And so he even uses the imagery of vineyards. And so, and I only point this out because as you go through, as we continue to study this, look at the overall picture that may be trying to be shown to us, and not, again, just every detail, or the fact that, like I said, she calls him or he calls her a horse. All right, question number 1. As you read Song of Solomon 1 verse 2 through 2 verse 7, how does the song portray physical attraction? What role do attraction and physical beauty play in the relationship between the man and the woman, and what can we learn from their example? Honey?
Physical attraction is presented as good, beautiful, and God-given.
All right, so attraction is presented as good, beautiful, and God-given. Absolutely. Daddy?
Actually, portray the attraction through the senses. Smell, taste, sight, and touch.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, and I don't think we've pointed this out maybe, but the Song of Solomon is a sensual book in the sense, I'm going to use sense a lot, in the sense it uses a lot of senses, all right, because it talks about touch and smell and sight and taste, and so all of these things obviously are there, and they're designed to invoke emotion and to give an overall understanding. Did I see another hand? Norm?
It runs through the gamut of what all of the senses, how they fit into the attraction. It's not just like, oh, it looks good, it looks pretty, it looks nice. It's, the attraction is all encompassing. It is the look, it is the feel, it is the smell. Like, it is the entire thing that encompasses our being, how we process the existence of our very existence itself, is encompassed in this interaction with this other person. And it is the combination of all these senses that drives the attraction. It's not just, oh, she looks good. It's, she looks good. Being near her feels good. She smells good. It's just, all of these things just come in and just inundate.
So who are some other examples that we can think of in the Bible that are described as attractive? Rachel? Abigail? David? So this is okay, all right? It's okay to be attracted to someone. This is God's design. This is God's intent. Obviously, we're all not going to be, we don't have the same view as beauty. Beauty is what? In the eye of the beholder. All right? And again, that's the way God intended for it to be. But attraction, physical attraction, is something that is key, especially to the beginning of the relationship. But one of the things that we see, and we see physical attraction on both sides. It's not just one or the other saying that. It literally is from both sides. But what you see is it goes well beyond that. All right? And she starts talking about the way that she respects him because of the way that he is respected. And so it's going beyond just that physical attraction. But how do they build this relationship? Obviously, you can see somebody and you're like, well, they're real pretty. How's it going to get beyond that? How's it going to get beyond, well, they're real pretty? Sam?
They're talking to each other.
They do a whole lot of talking. They are communicating a lot to each other. And we'll talk about some of the ways that they are communicating with one another. But they're doing a whole lot of talking that, okay, that's exactly what has to happen if I'm going to go beyond, well, they sure look pretty, to now I understand and I can respect their character and their heart and the good characteristics like we talked about just a little bit ago. Francis?
They lift each other up by describing only the positive thoughts. They see the good in each other.
Okay. And we'll talk about that quite a bit whenever we talk about, I don't remember if it's the next question or the next one that talks about flattery. Sam, go ahead and close us out.
I think the female asks questions to know, wanting to know more about the other person. You want to talk about yourself. Yeah, you want to know about the other person. You want to invest yourself more into them. And I think that's how the relationship begins.
Yes.
Where do you shepherd your flocks? Where do you lie them down? What do you do?
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody, for your comments, your participation. We'll pick up with question 2 and lesson 3 and get into lesson 4 next week, Lord willing.